What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Modern Warfare. And in today's episode, we're moving on to the LMG category. I already covered the PKM quite a while back because I like the PKM so much. But in today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the SA87. Now, the SA87 has a base damage profile of 3128, but that only applies to the limbs. This is the only LMG that gets a damage multiplier to the entire torso, whereas the other ones you have to hit the upper torso to get that multiplier. And this torso damage is 3430, meaning it'll be a 3 to 4 shot kill as long as you're not shooting them in the limbs. As for headshots, we get a 1.49 multiplier, which gives us a headshot damage profile of 4642, and this means in the closer range situations, headshots aren't going to change the number of shots it takes to kill, whereas at longer ranges, just one headshot mixed in with 2 torso shots will give you a 3-shot kill. As for our rate of fire, this is 619 rounds per minute, which is the slowest in the LMG category, and this means our time to kill, assuming torso shots, up close is going to be 194 milliseconds, which is very competitive, although it is a little bit slower than the time to kill of some of the other LMGs. Getting into our ranges, as you can see here, our 3-shot kill range is pretty great at about 47 meters. Unless you're playing on like ground war maps and really hanging back trying to pick people off at range, you're generally going to stay well within that 3-shot kill range. As for suppressors, the lightweight suppressor will reduce this range by 25%, whereas the monolithic suppressor increases this by 7.5%. Now when it comes to hardcore, this gun is always a 1-shot kill as long as you're hitting him in the torso, whereas beyond 47 meters, if you hit them in the arms or the legs, it will be a 2-shot kill at that point. So it's very forgiving up close, but at longer ranges, just make sure you're not shooting them in the arms or the legs. When it comes to hipfire, the SA87 actually has the best hipfire in the LMG category, and this is more comparable with some of the assault rifles in the game, so that's one of the bonuses of using this gun over the other LMGs. And when we have a look at idle sway, you can see here there is almost no idle sway initially when you aim down sights, and then after a couple seconds it does kick in and it moves very slowly, so it's not really a huge problem with this gun. As for recoil, the SA87 has pretty strong recoil. You can see it kicks pretty far upwards and a little bit to the right. However, when you have a look at the recoil pattern, this is a very consistent and very easily controlled recoil pattern. It doesn't bounce around side to side very much. It follows a nice straight path. And this means the recoil is actually pretty good for this gun. It's pretty easy to control, and also this means you definitely don't need any attachments that help with recoil stabilization, because that's that side-to-side bounce that helps with, and there's really not much room for improvement in that area. So if you do want to reduce the recoil on this, focus on attachments that help with recoil control, not recoil stabilization. As for our aim down sight time, unfortunately, it is extremely slow. It matches all of the other LMGs, aside from the Holger, at 434 milliseconds, and this is just painfully slow. Our sprint out time, though, is actually surprisingly not too bad for an LMG at 284 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time, and 400 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. Keep in mind, most of the other LMGs have a sprint out time of about 350 milliseconds, so it is noticeably better here. As for magazine capacity, this is one of the weak points of this gun because it has only a 30-round magazine with 60 in reserve, and this is an LMG. That is very, very small for an LMG, and it's more like an assault rifle in that area. As for a reload add time, this is 2.24 seconds, which is kind of in a weird place where it's not nearly as fast as the assault rifles, even though you only have a 30-round magazine, yet at the same time, it's not even close to as slow as the other LMGs. Now, if you did want to speed that up, you could use sleight of hand, which will cut that down to 1.55 seconds, which is much more in line with what you would see with an assault rifle in this game. This brings us to movement speed, which is pretty decent for an LMG at 92%. It's not as fast as an assault rifle, but not as slow as most of the LMGs. And our aim down sight strafe speed is 39%, which is not really all that great, but it could be worse, I guess. So that pretty much covers it for the base stats of the SA87, and it's pretty clear that this gun is meant to be kind of a hybrid between an LMG and an assault rifle. But before we get into our attachment combinations and recommended class setups, I did want to cover some of the unique attachments for this LMG. And first up, we have the barrel attachments. Now, the first barrel you unlock is the 18.2-inch factory barrel, and with this one, this improves your aim down sight time by about 3 frames. It's actually a really nice reduction to your aim down sight time. And this means your new aim down sight time will be 384 milliseconds. On top of that, you move just a little bit faster with this barrel. It increases your movement speed by 1%. However, this reduces your bullet velocity, which in turn does actually reduce your damage range as well by about 10%. On top of that, we do see a loss of recoil control as well, but when we have a look at the side-by-side here, honestly, it's not that big of a difference, and therefore I wouldn't be too concerned about reducing your recoil control with this particular barrel. So that's the first barrel you unlock. As for the second one, this is the 25.4-inch factory barrel, and with this one, we get a 20% increase to our damage range, which is really nice. And on top of that, it does help with bullet velocity as well as recoil control, which if we have a look at the side-by-side right here, you can definitely see that it is helping out a little bit, so this might be helpful if you're going for more of a long-range playstyle. However, the downsides for this are fairly extreme. Your aim down sight time is slowed down to 467 milliseconds, which, like I said, the base aim down sight time is already painfully slow, so making it any slower really hurts this gun. And on top of that, our overall movement speed is reduced by 1%. As a result, this is a barrel that I never really recommend using. The benefits from it are really not needed. It's just strengthening the already strong points of this gun, while making it even weaker in the areas where it's already pretty weak. But this brings us to the third and final barrel that you unlock for the SA87, and this is the 12.4-inch factory barrel, and with this one, we improve our aim down sight time quite a bit by actually 4 frames, so this means our new aim down sight time is just 367 milliseconds. Now this is still slower than all of the assault rifles, but it is a huge improvement over where the base aim down sight time is. Now on top of this, we also increase our movement speed by about 2%, so now we're well within the realm of the movement speed of an assault rifle, which is great. And the cons to this is, first off, we do get a 20% reduction to our damage range, even though it's not stated on the attachment. So it is something you have to be aware of. You are cutting that down, but you still have a very respectable 3-shot kill range. And on top of that, we do lose recoil control, which again, if we have a look at the side-by-side here, it's not a massive difference in recoil control, but you can definitely see that it does add a little bit more recoil than the 18-inch barrel did, and therefore it is something to consider. At the end of the day though, with this barrel, you still generally have a better range than all of the assault rifles out there. You get a massive improvement to your aim down sight time, which is the huge weakness with this gun, and therefore I would say the pros absolutely outweigh the cons on this. And that covers it for the barrel attachments, although we also have 2 other unique attachments, and these are the extended mag ones. And the first one is the 50-round extended mag, which says that it reduces your aim down sight time, but based on my testing, there is no measurable change to your aim down sight time with this. However, it will slow your overall movement speed down by about 2%. Similarly, we have the 60-round mag, and once again, there's no impacts that I can measure at least at 60 FPS to your aim down sight time, which is great. Although this one does reduce your movement speed by about 3% rather than 2%, and this is why I tend to just go with the 50-round magazine. I don't think the extra 10 rounds are worth an extra 1% reduction to movement speed, but I really do like using extended mags with this because it still feels like an LMG. Even if you try and deck it out like an assault rifle, it feels like an LMG, and therefore I think it should have at least a somewhat respectable magazine capacity. But that wraps it up for all of the important information you need to know about the SA87. Now let's move on to some great attachment combinations and example class setups. And the first one I want to share with you guys is kind of like a suppressed assault rifle style build with this. So we are going to try and push it so it's a lot more mobile and aggressive, while also being suppressed so we can stay off the radar. With this, we're using the 12.4-inch barrel, which is the shortest one that helps us the most with aim down sight time, as well as the monolithic suppressor. On top of that, in the stock section, we're using the ForgeTac CQB comb, and this is the one that helps with aim down sight time as well, just so we can really get the most out of our aim down sight time. And we're also using sleight of hand combined with a 50-round magazine, just so that we get a solid magazine capacity and a pretty decent reload time as well, because we will be relatively aggressive with this, and I want to take advantage of that as much as possible. Taking this one into an example class setup, we've got a suppressed 1911, but you can use whatever pistol you'd like. We've got EOD for our first perk, Ghost for our second perk, obviously, because we want to stay off the radar, and Tune Up for our third perk so we can get dead silence as often as possible. As for our lethal, this is a Semtex, and our tactical is a Stim Shot. I've actually found a decent amount of success with this particular build in Ground War, where I can roam around the map, picking people off from the side, flanking them as much as possible, while also being relatively aggressive and fighting people within the same room as me, rather than trying to hang back and pick them off like I normally would with an LMG. So that's the first one. Next, I want to move into the second one, which is more of a proper LMG build. With this reason, the 18.2-inch barrel, which is going to help a little bit with our aim down sight time, which I still feel is important even if you're hanging back with this gun, just because that base aim down sight time is so painfully slow. We've also got the GI mini reflex for our optic, just because I really like that as an optic, and we will be picking people off at longer ranges with this. For our rear grip, we've got stippled grip tape. This will help a little bit with our aim down sight time and also with our sprint out time, which is just nice. We've got the 60 round magazine on this one because we're not going to be super mobile, so it's fine to get that extra 10 rounds. And finally, we've got the Merc 4 grip, and this is going to be helping us with our accuracy just a little bit more because even though the recoil is quite controllable, if we're looking at like 50 plus meters, it definitely helps to have that Merc 4 grip on there to make it a little bit easier than it already is. Now, taking that one into an example class setup, we've got the Desert Eagle as our secondary, EOD as perk 1, Kill Chain is perk 2, because we are going to be hanging back, picking people off, and when you do that, you can often chain your streaks together quite well. And finally, we have Shrapnel combined with Thermite to take out those tanks, because this is more of a ground war class setup. This just leaves us with our tactical, which is once again going to be a stim shot. I just think that is the best bang for your buck when it comes to using tacticals. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the SA87. As for my thoughts on this gun, I do think it's one of the worst guns in the game in its current state. The only thing it really has going for it over the other LMGs is the fact that its multiplier zone applies to the entire torso and not the upper torso, so it's a bit more forgiving for getting those 3-shot kills. But aside from that, it seems to be in a really weird place where it's definitely supposed to be an LMG assault rifle hybrid as far as the game goes. But even with a good attachment combination, at best you can make a bad assault rifle or an average to below average LMG. Now, if it were up to me, the only thing I would do with the SA87 is improve its aim down sight time. Give it like a 384 millisecond base aim down sight time so that it separates it a bit more from the other LMGs and really solidifies that role as an assault rifle LMG hybrid. At that point, it would still be worse than most of the assault rifles in the game, but at least it would be a lot more usable than it currently is, and it would give it a proper role. Of course, that's just my opinion though. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the SA87? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think this is actually a really underrated gun and it's very good? Or do you agree that it's not so great in its current state? Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.